Resident Evil 3 is quite a disappointing game. You can complete the game, go through the difficulties again, but that is it. Based on its current form, I feel no further need to play that game anymore. Resident Evil 3 gets a 6 out of 10 from me. Guys, there's absolutely no denying this. I am enjoying Resident Evil 3 Remake in 2025.
It can't be like this.
It is this way, man. I'm sorry I exposed you to it, but it is. It's ugly, but it's necessary.
Now here's a question for you. Is Resident Evil 3 Remake a bad game, a bad remake, or both? In 2020, when the game first released, I was convinced that the entirety of the product was one big pile of dino dung, albeit with a trimming of sugar and sprinkles here and there, as even I could appreciate some of the game's more notable moments like exploring the city, as limited as that was. And in my 2020 review, I laid hard into the game's handling of the Nemesis character, citing that he was now more moronic than ever, and laid out my utter contempt with regards to Jill's godlike plot armor. And then you are again reunited with Nemesis, who grabs your head, pulls you out from that hole, drops you, and says, I've got a flamethrower, I'm going to try this. And then you begin the chase. So there's another instance of plot armor right there. Despite being in development for about 3 years, the game felt like it needed a lot more time to cook. What happened to the clock tower, graveyard and dead factory locations? Where did all the puzzles go? And why did Capcom throw us this abomination? So what's happened here, guys? How can I go from almost hating a game I'd previously completed about a handful of times, sure in the knowledge that I would certainly never revisit it again, to now enjoying it so much that it's actually become my go-to RE comfort game? What the hell is going on? Yeah, I gotta be honest, there's still a lot of things I absolutely hate about RE3 Remake. Let's start with the amount of stationary zombies with obvious boundaries in the game, turning down the tension more than a showing of Debbie Does Dallas. Why doesn't Jill mention her running away from Nemesis to Kendo with about as much concern in her face and tone as a kid in a candy shop? What about those bloody icons to important items which are blatantly given to you through walls without the need to search for them like the Magnum in the hospital? Come on, Capcom, have some faith in your audience.
Guaranteed to give you a headache.
Why is Nemesis flailing about like an idiot in this scene when he's been on fire multiple times beforehand without any complaints? And how come the assault rifle sounds like it's made of plastic? And what about the fact that pretty much every zombie in the game dies twice, making them far more predictable and less dangerous as a result? The RE3 Remake had its 5-year anniversary in April of this year. Despite my past grievances, I decided to take a gamble with what precious free time I had and revisit the game I had once thought to be irredeemable. Let me really start things here by addressing the one obvious fact which I think all members of the RE community can agree with. 2020's Resident Evil 3 is still Capcom's worst RE remake. Everything that can be said about how lacking this game is has been said 1,000,000,000,000 times over, but what you'll find by discussing with the community is that most people have a slightly different take from one another. One person, for example, may absolutely love Nemesis in the remake, while still acknowledging his misuse compared to the OG, while another may enjoy the game's gameplay and overall adventure, despite the game's famously short length. With that being said, here are my personal and absolute top 3 main grievances with the remake, which still remain to this day. Cut content. The cut content, such as the awesome choice mechanic and aforementioned missing locations and iconic set pieces, will forever remain an absolute injustice, and I'm including the lack of multiple endings with this, which is something the series has gone on to largely ditch in recent times, preferring a more concrete conclusion, rather than an intriguing choice left up to the player. And the fact that there's a lack of mercenaries mode, which actually began in the OG game, feels more than unjust. If it ain't broke, don't fucking fix it. In my 2020 review, I went on to say how the OG felt longer in scope because of how beefed out the content was. The remake, even if factually longer in length, feels far shorter regardless because of the lack of these cut locations and mechanics. Dummy Doggy Nemi. Nemesis is still a blithering idiot with about as much untethered freedom as a caged bird. The fact that bipedal Nemesis makes up only about a half of the game, handing over the spotlight to Doggy Nemi for the second half, makes me feel like I've been scammed out of my money and, admittedly, my nostalgia too. Why is a creature who was designed to cut out the nonsense and kill its targets on sight, 1, throwing them about, giving them a chance to escape, and 2, running around its target like an extremely large headless chicken? And let's not forget that this Nemesis doesn't even kill a single STARS member in the remake. Capcom, what the fuck happened here? Sassy Jill.
Alright, Super Cop. Here you go. We can use this to stay in contact.
I know what a radio is.
Jill has never been as unlikable as she is in RE3 Remake. While the argument can certainly be made that this interpretation of Jill has the most character, her previous iterations were more traditional, shall we say, while still maintaining that independent quality, competence and self-assuredness that made fans fall in love with her to begin with. Maybe it's a generational thing. This new take on the character, who swears a lot and has almost about as much attitude as Eric Cartman, and doesn't take the smallest off-the-cuff comments lightly, even in the midst of an entire city in turmoil, makes her seem more like an aggressive feminist big boss bitch, in all honesty.
Where is he?
Went underground. Bard stockpiled the vaccine, enough to give this city some hope.
He thinks he can do this by himself. I'm going after him.
Well, I don't know. He took care of you, Jill. And why is she much thinner now? Her sexual attraction went down about 3 notches in this game. Have a pie, you skinny cow.
Ballsy motherfucker.
If the remake had only retained more of these missing environments and mechanics, as well as giving us a Jill that wasn't always on the rag, and a Nemesis that wasn't so feeble, then there would have been a good chance that the RE3 remake could have been a much better received successor.
Well, it's been a while. Subway's got to be clear of the city by now.
Along with your hot date.
Nah, she's not like that. Hell, she's not like anybody.
However, on the more positive side of things now, the remake did amp up the involvement of Carlos for one, who was probably the remake's best character.
Here we go. Right. Big, warm RPD welcome. Kind of fucked up shooting cops.
T and Nikolai also have larger roles in the remake and are much better renditions for it, the latter being my personal favourite. Honestly, this guy pretty much saved the story for me. Just look at that devious smile.
Come on, don't look at me like that, alright? I'm not unaffected.
No,
No, wait, please!
What the fuck?
He was infected.
He might have been infected.
Oh, stars this soft. No wonder so many of you dead.
And what are you, UBCS? Killing your own people?
He would have turned. There's your sense of self-preservation. Go back to the subway station. I don't need a bleeding heart like you getting in the way.
The remake also gave us a way better evade mechanic, which was a vast improvement on the OGs, with the ability to now perfect dodge an enemy given the right timing, thereby granting you a lock-on to the target's craniums. Not to mention some cool set pieces too, which were both familiar and completely fresh from the OG. The gameplay was never horrendous, it was always above serviceable, but as a remake, the game is about as honourable to the source material as the Paul Anderson movies. You get a good vibe here and there, but ultimately it fails to deliver, and coming from such a highly regarded company, it's no surprise that the fan outcry was as loud as it was. So can you imagine my surprise then when revisiting the game this year to find myself enjoying it to the point I had to play it again and again and again. So, what changed? As simple as it sounds, guys, upon the discovery of 2022's high frame rate mode alongside the PS5's graphical upgrade from the PS4 version, it soon became clear to me that this version of the remake was not only a much prettier product to look at, but also a much more responsive experience to boot. Navigating the landscape is now smoother than ever. The slightest touch of the controller's analog means that I can now fully divulge into my cinematic obsessions. Previously capped at 60 FPS on the PS4, which was certainly smooth in of itself, this upgrade to an almost steady 100 FPS is certainly a game changer for me. This also means then that perfect dodging is now much easier on this setting. You know what it's like. You're surrounded, you've got balls deep in the boss fights, you evade an enemy attack with a perfect dodge, and the dopamine comes running. Every single time. And perhaps most importantly, the increase in frame rate means that aiming is now more accurate. I don't feel like I'm somewhat dragging my crosshair over an enemy's weak spot anymore, so much as effortlessly covering that area on high frame rate mode. 60 FPS is great, but this increase in frame rate has made me much more competent at the game. It's still amazing to me that what seems like such a small tweak can make all the difference. In my 2020 review, I said that based on the remake's then current form, I felt no further need to play the game anymore. Graphics are great, but the gameplay doesn't compare to me. The addition of high frame rate mode and the PS5 graphical upgrade has brought me back, and guys, I am loving it. If I find myself wanting a short and sweet RE experience, I can now quite happily chuck the remake on PS5 and comfortably blitz through on hardcore in just a few hours. I think a lot of us can agree. RE3 Remake is a decent gaming experience, it's just a less than average remake. It's missing a bunch of shit and quality of life mechanics, but the adventure is still serviceable. But on PS5, it goes from serviceable to great. And so, I'm giving the Resident Evil 3 Remake on PlayStation 5 a score of 7 out of 10. If you haven't yet done so, I encourage all PS5 players to give the remake another shot on these settings. You never know, you may, just may, enjoy it more this time around. If you'd like to see my 2020 review where I go a bit more in depth on some of these features, you can now find it on screen now and in the description. Let me know in the comments if you've changed your mind on the remake's gameplay on this setting. Thank you all very much for watching the video, and I will see you all very soon.